Writing one cue per week. I mean, this is where we get our name, 52 Cues. But for the folks who joined Expedition 52, it was more than just writing. It was a year-long composer quest to write, yes, every single week, but also to give feedback every single week for an entire year. 52 cues written and 52 opportunities to give feedback to fellow composers. And it was a real climb. But today, I'm happy to be joined by some of the folks who made it to the summit. We're going to be unpacking what they learned, how they stayed motivated throughout the entire year, and the systems that they built to stay consistent through surgeries, school schedules, vacations, even raising toddlers. Because creative momentum, it's not something you find, it's something that you build week after week after week. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Kropf, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, where each week we are talking about all things production and library music. So whether you're just starting out or maybe you're already seeing your cues on TV, I promise you're in the right place. Now, today's episode is made possible thanks to the support of our member subscribers of 52 Cues, who are composers just like you working to write better cues and find success in the sync music industry. And 52 Cues is there to help make that happen with live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, pitching to real music libraries, and a ton more. So if you're curious about joining us, you can head over to 52cues.com or just stick around because I'm going to be talking more about that a little bit later in today's episode. Speaking of today's episode, I'm happy to be joined by some of the composers who completed the 2024 Expedition 52 year-long composer quest, and they're here to share what the climb was like, what they learned along the way, and how they kept going week after week. Plus, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on a dark tension cue from 52 Cues family member George Cicci. But first, what have I been working on lately? Well, actually didn't get a chance to write a ton last week because it was spring break at Full Sail and also the second annual 52 Cues family reunion, where we had some of the family members come here into Orlando, and they came to the house, and we grilled up wings, we did burgers, we ate so much food, we even got to spend some time on campus at Full Sail, so it was a really, really great time. So I really didn't get to write much, but that's not to say I don't have something to show you. A couple of weeks ago, as I was wrapping up the golf documentary that I've been working on, the producers came back and said that they wanted something that was they wanted more drone music, but they didn't want dark drone music. They wanted more kind of uplifting, positive, ambient drone music. So I thought, what if I took what I know about creating kind of drone-based ominous tension cues and just bend it towards positivity? So here is Approaching the 18th, which is an uplifting, positive, ambient drone cue. So that was approaching the 18th. And for you neighbor subscribers, this was actually written during one of the recent live streams, and you can check that out. And for you family and friends folks, I'm going to be doing a complete cue breakdown on this cue, talking about the sounds, including creating my own vocal pad in Serum 2. And so you can be on the lookout for that relatively soon. So for today's main topic, I was so thrilled to be recently joined by several of the folks who completed the 2024 Composer Quest. Like I said at the top of the show, this was a quest where composers wrote one cue per week, but also submitted feedback on another composer's cue once a week for an entire year. And it was not without its challenges. And so we sit down and we talked about that process and what they really got out of the entire experience. I am so thrilled to welcome a handful of folks from the 52 Cues community who completed the 2024 Expedition 52. Welcome, Reed, Gar, Enrico, and Dolfo. Welcome to the podcast. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Good, very good.
Excellent. Now, we are recording this several months after, but I do want to go ahead and let everybody know that these aren't all the folks who completed the Expedition 52 challenge. We also had Leo Voyne, Doug Knight, Nathan Toft, Simon Tong, Dex Williams, Ralph Martin, Alan Moore, and Darren Lewis, who weren't able to join us today. But what we're doing today, first of all, I just wanted to go on record and say congratulations. Congratulations to you, gentlemen, and congratulations to the folks who completed the Expedition 52 challenge for 2024. And if you're watching or listening and you don't really know, what does that mean? Well, Expedition 52 was a challenge that we started last year where composers, they joined the year-long Composer Quest. They wrote one cue per week for the entire year. And in addition to writing, they also needed to provide feedback. That was the condition. You had to write a new cue, and they had to provide feedback. So my first question is, and we'll start with Enrico here. Enrico, what made you want to join Expedition 52? What was It's not like you don't have anything going on, you know? What made you want to do this thing?
A moment of insanity. No, I think I'd been in the 52 community for a couple of years and tried to follow and tried to write every week and didn't always succeed. There was always that, I'll finish it off next week. And it really appealed to me to have a set deadline, to have other people to kind of commit to. So that was the reason.
What about you, Reed? What made you join? What made you join the expedition?
Well, like Enrico said, I mean, I did the weekly there was a weekly feedback that I was already doing, but you know, there's not much pressure to get it done. It's nice we were doing it, but then with this challenge, although it was $52, right? It was
like a dollar a week, right?
Yeah, there wasn't much skin in the game, but there was skin in the game, that pressure to do to actually knowing that there's a challenge and you want to get it done. It kind of pushed me. It was enough push to make it work. So I like that deadline and the push. So
gotcha. Now, Dolfo, you're a full-time teacher. In fact, I think you're zooming in during one of your teaching breaks right now. So you obviously, have a lot going on in your life as well. What were you hoping to get out of the expedition?
Yeah. Yes, I am on a little bit of a conference break right now. It's very similar to Reed and Enrico. I have been trying to do this really since about 2020 is when I first kind of started learning about this whole side of the music world and knowing that this is something I wanted to start pursuing. And going into 2024, I really wanted to push to try and get some momentum going. And I know when the start of the year happened, I saw this coming up, and I was a little hesitant on it. But I know there was one point you talked about, having a little bit of skin in the game helps push a little bit. And I'm very much that kind of person, for better, for worse. When I put a little bit of financial skin in the game, it pushes me to do things and use things. And then at the same time, I actually listened to a Taxi TV that happened around the same time that had Matt Vanderbilt on it. And he, for those that don't know, he's someone who's really successful in this world and writes a lot. And he talked about his first year where he pushed himself. He did the same thing. He wrote a cue a week. So listening to that and knowing, having this come around, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to push myself. I'm going to make this be that year that I figure this out. So I put my skin in the game and I pushed myself to find a system and make a system that worked for me to write consistently and get better at what I was doing. So that was the impetus to do this for myself.
Gotcha. Gar, your thoughts? What made you want to jump into this, and what did you hope to get out of it?
Well, everybody says you got to do the reps, and I thought that would be a good way. And I'm always a sucker for a challenge. I like to push myself. I actually didn't think I could do it because I had a couple surgeries coming up in the last year, and I figured, well, there's no way I'm going to make it. But somehow I just kept plugging, and got through the whole thing. I got more than halfway through the year and thought, man, I got this far. I ain't quitting now.
Yeah, you can't quit now. Yeah, and so the whole expedition was themed around mountain climbing, right? The Expedition 52, and so we had weekly kind of check-ins and weekly themes, and we had these. I think it's fair to say that we really stretched the metaphor, pretty far. So every single week, we started out in base camp, and then we moved up through the ice fall, and then we moved up into the ridges. And so every single week there was something brand new happening. And we really stretched this. We stretched this metaphor pretty far. But what was some of the most unexpected challenges you guys ran into? Enrico, did you have anything that maybe stuck out in your mind as far as the most difficult thing you had to overcome?
Keeping it up, and convincing yourself that you have to get something out. I think, parallel to that is what I definitely learned is to just let go of the cue by the end of the week. You got what you got, you've done your best, but just post it. And a lot of times it was like, oh, I'm being a bit too precious, it's not finished, it's not good enough. Maybe I can add something else. And I think that was the challenge, just forcing myself to just keep going.
Now, Enrico, writing every week is nothing new to you. You are one of the OG Facebook guys back in 2019, 2000, even before then, I think, the original. Yeah, the original 52 Cues community on Facebook. And you were as faithful there as you were, and still in 2025, the expedition for 2025. So what was it about the expedition specifically that kind of motivated you beyond what you were already doing? Was it the skin in the game? Was it the gamification of it? What do you think?
I think the gamification and the camaraderie that we built with the people definitely helped. Just seeing that, encouraging other people and getting the encouragement from the other people really, really helped, because there was, we were all struggling at times and we're all encouraging each other to just keep going. I think for me, by the beginning of 2024, I figured, okay, I've done the raps for a few years, where in 19, the stuff that I wrote was horrible. I've listened back to some of it and, oh my God, what was I posting? But you had to learn how to do the business that we're doing. And I felt, okay, maybe now I can do it, and not just do it, but actually hopefully come up with something that is worth posting every week, so that I won't be fighting with, oh, that's really rubbish, don't put it out. financially, okay, this is okay. I can feel good about it.
Reed, any challenges that you faced, maybe that you didn't expect along the way?
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge of this whole event was a new cue every week. It wasn't like I could take something I did from 2019 or 2020. Well, actually, I didn't start really till 2020, but and then redo it. You had to do something from scratch. So that was the biggest challenge, was actually doing something new every week. And so learning how to get that to do that quickly and get through it was a big challenge. And also, we do go on vacation, right? So we have to do every week, and then trying to fit that in that schedule was also a big challenge for me.
And what were ways that you solved that challenge? The vacations, or like guards and surgeries and that kind of thing?
Well, you had to cheat a little bit, like maybe start a new cue a week before, or I think I missed 1 week and I had to go back and post. So I didn't quite fit the every week challenge, but I did. It was a new cue, but I did go back and post a new cue back a week or so prior when I had to. So
no, I think that goes along with the mountain climbing metaphor. The group moves on, and maybe you have to sit and get some oxygen, and then you have to kind of jog to catch up. No, I think the metaphor still works.
Really hard to get there. Yeah.
Dolfo, any specific challenges that you didn't anticipate, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, the basic challenges of life coming into the way and all that sort of stuff. The other thing, besides this job that I have at the time, I had 3 kids under the age of 3. I have twins that just turned 2 yesterday, and I have a girl that's about to be 4 in about a month. So that was another difficult part about the year, but figuring out how to make that work with my schedule, the little bit of time that I had at home. And then when we had, family time or vacation time, and how that impacted the whole progress of the year. And it's really figuring out systems to make myself more efficient was the year, like the real thing that I came out of the year, how to write efficiently in the amount of time that I had, and what was going to be my personal schedule as to when I would sit down in my little corner studio and get the stuff done.
Right. Gar, you mentioned having to kind of schedule around surgeries and that kind of thing. What was your approach? Did you play catch up, or did you try to get ahead of things?
I did one every week. I started it in the week that I finished it. What I did was Wednesday's my composing day, and I crank one out, and then I have a couple of more days to tweak it and mix it with fresh ears. And so I just did it. I did a couple of them on pain pills. Just said in the feedback, I just said this, it might be weird because I'm on pain pills, but here it is.
Have you gone back and listened to them and thought, wow, this is amazing? Or did you think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
I've listened back and thought, I don't remember doing this.
I don't know if that's an endorsement or not, but we'll move on. That's fine. We'll just say that music history is full of musicians who have made quite a career from altered states. So we'll just leave it at that. What do you guys or how do you feel like your writing has changed over time? Reed, how do you feel if you go back and look at January 2024 Reed versus December 2024 Reed? Do you see, what are some aspects that you feel have either improved or shifted over the year?
I think overall the mixing and the mastering part really got better. And Enrico he's Mr. Golden Ears. He would really give us great feedback week after week, and that would you go back and go, oh wow, yeah, I can do that better. I can know those peaks are there. The kick isn't really hitting well, and so you start, if you're doing the repetition, if you're doing it over and over again, you start hearing that. Oh yeah, he's right. So that for me was what really I think was a huge improvement on my end was the mixing and mastering, is just getting it sounding it better. I mean, of course, the composing part got faster, but the harder part for me was actually that mixing and making it sound better. So.
Dolfo, what about you? What did January 2024 or what did December 2024 learn that maybe January 2024 Dolfo didn't know?
How much time I have to actually kind of the minute, like, figure things out, like the stress over a cue. The mixing, for sure. I actually opened up some old sessions from last year that I did in February, and there's just some of the things I did on there were ugly, and I laughed at myself. That's the biggest thing that I think changed. And then my focus on what I was writing. I kind of gained focus in what I was going to do throughout the course of the year, and understanding like what kind of sounds work and where to put them and when to use them and all that sort of stuff and what didn't work, things like that.
Gar, same question.
I think I learned that finishing the first draft of the cue is just the beginning. You're half done, because now you've got to go back and do some revisions, and then you've got to come up with some metadata and all the fun things. And I didn't even consider that in my, I got to do 52 of them in a year. I didn't think about there's more to it.
Yeah, the writing is just producing the cue is just half the gig. Delivering the cue is the entire other half. Yep. You know, Enrico, Reed gave you some love because of your feedback, and I want to say, had I a hat, I would be tipping it to you, sir, because if there is, you know, the model of how to give feedback, it would be you. Because you were faithful the entire year. You continue to be faithful. And going back to the Facebook days, this was one of the things that you just always brought to the table. So talk about the feedback and talk about that process and what do you get out of leaving feedback for folks?
I think is what you always talk about is I get a lot out of it because I can analyze a piece of music that I'm not emotionally attached to because it's not mine. I didn't write those notes, so I can say I don't like that one, or I don't like that sound, or whatever. Obviously, in a constructive, critical way. It's helped me. It's helped me a lot to understand structure because I've listened to so many different approaches. I write my music, I do what I do, and I just keep doing the same thing as we all do. But just listening to somebody else's approach to structure, to development, or to harmony, go, oh, okay, you could do it that way. So I think I was driven because I was just learning. I'm still learning so much from doing that. That was the main drive for it. I think what I mostly learned, particularly in the early years of being in 52 Cues community, is just listening. I do listen to a lot of music as a matter of fact, but having moved into production music, it's great to see other production music, particularly stuff that is a little bit rough around the edges, because you go, you know, I'm watching somebody that is just writing it right now, so I can see what it's like, but it's not quite polished and finished. And you can see that that's maybe the earliest stage of that particular cue.
Now, Dolfo, as an educator, you know, I'm an educator myself, you know, we are often programmed to give feedback, to identify, you know, pain points that can be addressed and everything. Did you find the feedback in the community and in the expedition? Did you find it familiar feeling, or did you struggle with that aspect?
I didn't really struggle. It's something I've been seeking out since I started this, and I think that's where like the educator side of me helped. Is, you know, I understood from the get-go that getting feedback is really important, and to kind of take ego out of it and to not take the pains about it. So it's a really natural thing for me, and why I seeked it out and why I continue to do it going into this year. And was one of the things that I found was so important that probably by about like week 8, I decided I wasn't going to post finished cues anymore. I was going to post cues that I thought were just about there. And then I wanted to get feedback before I put the final stamp on it. So I found like it was something that was important to get just to to find what it really sounded like. It's actually something I do with my students a lot. And anybody who's studied with a private instrument teacher will know when you record yourself, it's very different sounding than what you think it sounds like. And I think it's the same concept. You're so in your monitors, listening to what you're doing, you're so invested into it. You need some other ears to tell you what it really sounds like so that you can get clarity on what you need to do to get it to that next level.
Now, Gar, you are a quiet strength. You know, you came here to Orlando last year for the family reunion, and I could probably count on one hand the number of words that you speak. So, but when you do say something, it's usually very profound, and I really appreciate that about you. Did you find the feedback any particular challenge as somebody who usually kind of listens more than you speak? Was the feedback any of an issue for you?
It was a real challenge for me. It seems like everybody's style is different than mine. I feel kind of alone in the Southern rock kind of stuff I've been doing, but so I didn't know how to give the feedback. I didn't know what I was listening for. It took a while before I had to see what other people were saying, and then go back and listen to the cue and say, "Oh yeah, I can hear that. I can hear that." And it took me a little bit to get going, but that was a challenge.
Right on. Right about. What about you, Reed? I know that you were relatively early on your production music journey, and I am thrilled to congratulate you on a recent placement, your first ever placement. Huge congratulations on CBS Sports. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But I know that folks who are maybe earlier in their journey might feel a little, dare I say, intimidated or unqualified, to be able to give feedback. Is that, not to put words in your mouth, but was that anything that you found challenging specifically because of where you are in your path?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely difficult, because you're kind of up against people who've been doing it for a really long time, and so you're like, when I'm saying you want to be constructive, you also want to give an honest review of what your ears are telling you, right? So that's where I was more apprehensive when I was trying to do that. So, but at the same time, being part of the family, which is the 52Q's family, where we had the weekly feedback sessions, and so I had been doing some of that first, and so that helped when I went into the expedition process, where I was already doing some of that during those weekly feedbacks. So I was taking those lessons, and what everyone else was doing, I was applying those to the expedition. So I think that it helped a lot. And as I say, and as you always say, giving feedback is actually better for you as a person than getting feedback. So it helps you learn about what you're hearing, because you hear things, as Enrico said, it's not your cue, so you're a little bit more open to hearing the issues that you may not want to hear in the cue that you made. So.
Yeah, right on. It really is the Jedi mind trick that happens. You giving feedback, you receive more than you actually give, and that's the secret sauce. That is the secret sauce to what makes 52 Qs in general. It's why feedback is a cornerstone of the entire community and runs throughout every single thing that we do, whether it's the live streams, briefing room, composer quest, or anything. Giving feedback and receiving feedback, I think, is the best way to grow as a composer. Speaking of growing as a composer, I would like to listen to some of your cues. And so let's go ahead and we'll start with Enrico. Enrico, tell us about your cue, Twilight of Mischievous Sprites. And we're gonna put you nice and pinned here. Tell us about it.
Well, I think the big challenge for me during that year was I've never done a lot of orchestral work. I was very new to contact libraries. I did some really horrible arrangements in the past, and I really try to push myself to do that. I actually got through the year an album of circus macabre music that is kind of vaguely orchestral placed. I think some of my best work was in that, but I'm not allowed to play it at the moment because it's being published. So this is kind of part of a second album that I need to get on finishing because it isn't finished. It's kind of dark storytelling, fairy tale kind of music. That's the general.
Excellent. Well, let's take a listen to it, and then we'll looking forward to it. That was Twilight of Mischievous, Sprites. So well done, Enrico. And man, I got a whiff of Camille Saint-Saëns in that. Really, really nice. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you so much, Enrico, for sending that along. Look who crashed the party. Dex, what is happening, my man? How are you?
I was all ready for 5 o'clock, and I've just realised the clocks have changed at your end.
Yep, exactly. That's what we were sitting here, and then I sent the email out thinking, we were sitting here, and then I was like, I should probably send an email out. We're just getting cranked up. Well, I mean, we're half an hour in, but glad you're here, man. Now, not everybody was able to join us here today for our for the interview, but I want to take a listen to a cue from Nathan Toft, who sent along this video.
Hi, Dave. Nathan Toft here from Ottawa, Canada. Congratulations to everybody for reaching the summit of Expedition 52 2024. We're all stronger writers and producers for it, and some of us, me included, are back for more for another year. The song I've chosen to share is Tinker Coder Gadget Guy. I wrote it as part of The Climb and as part of the mastermind that I did last year. It's a Thomas Newman-esque science and technology, intriguing tension cue. I had a lot of fun putting it together. And as a matter of fact, it is part of an album that is now available should you happen to be in charge of a library and would like to bring on a new composer. Anyway, hope you enjoy the track, and congratulations once again to all the successful climbers.
So here is Tinker Coder Gadget Guy. I love that title. right, that was Tinker, Coder, Gadget Guy. Again, Nathan, congratulations on summiting with us for 2024. So very thrilled to welcome Dex Williams. What is happening, Dex? Little time zone wonkery. Yeah, this is what US switches our clocks ahead 2 weeks, I think, early. So that's good. But we're glad you're here, Dex, man. It wouldn't be a podcast session or a check-in without Dex. Dex, one of the things that we talked about earlier and wanted to get your take is what made you want to do the expedition? You've got a YouTube channel that you do that's banging out videos all the time. You're also, you have a life and a job and all of that. So why Expedition 52 last year?
I think it was a continuation from having done the mastermind, and that drove me to write regularly. And as soon as the mastermind finished, I didn't really have that impetus to definitely finish a queue. So it was just something I've thought, yeah, this will give me something to focus on each week. And once I got into trying to follow the briefs and just realized there's a whole bunch of different styles to start trying out, I just got hooked.
Right on.
And yeah, really enjoyed the process of trying something new each week.
Right on. Anything that you learned about yourself or your process over the course of the year?
Yeah, I definitely streamlined my process of writing. And I mean, if you see any of my latest YouTube videos, I pretty much do the same thing. I now have 3 sessions that I sit down at, and that was developed during 52 Cues, the Expedition 52, where I sit down to start with and throw a load of instruments at the brief, then go away, come back and then structure it, then have another break, and then come back and master and mix it. And that is something that that was the way that I ended up doing it by the end of Expedition 52 last year.
Right on. Any unexpected challenges that you faced?
I think it was a matter of constantly learning. Like, as you've said in podcasts before, you don't know what you don't know. So you've got that circular finding out something and then, oh, right, I'll learn that and then master that. And then you suddenly realize something else. So it's that constant feedback. The hardest thing for me, from a technical point of view, was learning how to do bounce downs into stems and learning how to do that properly so that you actually have audio stems of your tracks at the end, which if a library is going to ask you for different breakdowns, narratives, beds, drum and bass, you can just print them really quickly. Plus, you're future-proofing yourself if any of your instruments suddenly don't work.
Or like if you stop paying a subscription for a plugin.
Yeah, so you've got those stems ready to go. So that was probably the most technical thing. And then from feedback that I constantly got, I was always trying to work on ostinato strings and trying to get them to sound better without having a live orchestra to play them, obviously. And I ended up finding close mic'd virtual strings, spizzicato, and then adding reverb was a lot more effective.
Right.
So I think I'm quite good at those now.
Right on. Yeah. Doing a year of that will do it for you. Well, let's take a listen to another cue. Dolfo, I would love for you to tell us about the winds of Dune.
Sure. Yeah, this is a cue I wrote back in like August, I think. This was part of the climb. This was for a taxi listing as well. It did get a 4, but I have not yet been contacted. So this is a queue that sometime this year I'll be flushing out to like a 5 queue EP to farm out to different libraries. It is a Middle Eastern flavored ambient queue. Yeah.
All right, let's take a listen to it. That was The Winds of Dune's Dolfo. Man, fantastic work. Of course, I'm a sucker for Duduk, man. I could listen to anything with Duduk in it. So really, really do appreciate that. Next up, let's hear from Gar. Gar, tell us about Highway Heat.
Well, I wrote it last year for the expedition. I chose this cue because it's typical of what I write, and it's the style that I have the most success with. So, yeah.
All right, let's take a listen to it. was Highway Heat from Gar. Gar, thank you so much, man. Really, really dug that. And again, congratulations on completing the climb. Next up, Dex, tell us about your cue.
Let's do the week 51, the Triumphant Cue. And it's probably a good summary of things that I learned along the way, the ostinato strings, the edit points, endings, and putting all those things together. It might have taken me 51 weeks to get there, but hey.
All right, let's take a listen to this is a Triumphant Cue. That was Dex's Triumphant Cue from week 51 last year. Dex, really, really appreciate you. And again, congratulations on completing the climb. All right, we are almost wrapped up here. Let's see, let's read. Tell us about your cue. This was Guilty Measures that you did along with Elysa.
Well, writing 52 cues means you have a lot to choose from. I was part of the mastermind with Dex, and I had the benefit of doing a cue with Dex as well as a collab. But my most prolific collaboration partner is Elysa Tancheff, and so thanks to her, I got over some of the weeks because we were doing these collabs together. So I chose this one to kind of highlight that collaboration efforts that we've been doing, and the fact that this was a cue that we both liked. So.
Let's take a listen to it. This is Guilty Measures. right, that was Guilty Measures from Reed and Elysa. Thank you. Thank you so much, Reed. Congratulations. Now, I know that Enrico has to bounce out here in just a second. And so before he leaves, I just want to give you a huge congratulations and a thank you because Enrico, Dolfo, and Dex are all three Sherpas for our 2025 expedition climb. That means that they have teams of their own that they are helping kind of up the mountain for 2025. But I just wanted to mention and thank you, Enrico, for your many, many years of supporting the 52 Qs community. And so I know you need to bounce out, but thank you so much, man. Really, really do appreciate you. Also need to say arrivederci. Oh, I guess I probably should have said that to the Italian guy, but to Dolfo. Dolfo, I know you need to bounce out as well. Go back to those kids, man. Is it jazz band? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's wrapping up. I got concert band next.
Yeah, right on, man. Appreciate you and congratulations, my man. We have one more that we're going to listen to. So we are going to take a listen to The Road Awaits from Doug Knight. The Road Awaits from Doug Knight. Doug, thank you. Thank you so much, man. And a huge congratulations on completing your climb. And we actually have one more that we're going to listen to. Del Peterson. Del couldn't join us today, but he sent along a message. He says, the inaugural edition of Expedition 52 arrived for me at a perfect time. As a new composer, having a constant source of motivation, writing with regular repetition, and getting regular feedback on literally every cue I wrote was incredibly valuable for me over the course of the year. As Dave had promised, learning to listen to the cues of fellow climbers with an attuned ear and give thoughtful feedback was a very important part of the process as well. It not only improved my own ear tremendously, but opened the door to meeting some incredibly talented composers from around the world. On the final personal note, Expedition 52 was perhaps the brightest spot for me in a year that offered some serious health challenges to our family. I'm not sure I would have made it through the year in nearly the same shape without having this experience to lift my spirits through personal achievement and interaction with the 52 Qs community. Del, again, I could get emotional hearing that because it's your community, and this wouldn't be possible without folks just like you coming together and pouring into each other. He did send along a cue. The cue Soul Survivor is from a collection of hybrid orchestral cues with traditional and synth-based instrumentation, epic leaning vocals, and futuristic themes. It's my 29th cue in the 2024 expedition and highlights some of the growth I experienced in my writing along the way. So here is Soul Survivor. That was Soul Survivor from Del. Del, thank you so much for sending that along. And he is also one of our Sherpas, along with Simon Tong. All of those folks completed the climb. So once again, a huge congratulations to Leo Voyne, to Doug, to Nathan, Simon, Gar, Del, Dex, Reed, Enrico, Ralph, Alan, Dolfo, and Darren for completing the climb, for writing a cue every single week for an entire year and providing feedback. Gentlemen, before we leave here, any words of wisdom, or what advice would you give to somebody? Maybe they're currently on the 2025 expedition, or maybe they're just wanting to get into a weekly writing habit. Any advice you would give?
I probably repeat this a lot, but for me, the biggest advice is just write. Don't worry about the result so much. I mean, obviously the result is important, but just write, because even if it's not the best cue in the world, the best you ever do, it's something you've done and you got it and you've completed. So, and just keep doing it every week. You'll get better, and you'll get better, and you'll get better. So, don't think too much. Just write and do your best.
Gar, your thoughts?
I would echo that. I think you have to write 100 crappy cues before you get a good one. So write the bad cues, get it out of your system.
Yep, it is the crappy cues is the fertilizer from forth grows the strongest tree. I don't know. Dex, save me from my tortured metaphor.
If I was going to give any advice, it would be, if you get stuck behind, just keep writing. You can catch up from a practical point of view of doing the Expedition 52.
Yep, this is why, just keep writing. This is why I keep Dory. I have a little Funko of Dory that stays on my desk to remind me to just keep writing. Just keep writing. So once again, a huge congratulations to everybody that participated in the expedition. If you're watching this right now, and maybe you had to hang up the galoshes or snowshoes at the halfway point, that's completely okay. The point isn't necessarily to summit, even though that is an accomplishment that should be celebrated, and that's what we're doing here today. But sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other and going at the pace that is sustainable for you, that's the victory. And so if you're on the expedition this year in 2025, hang in there. We've got teams of people who are there to support you, and I promise you, you are among like-minded composers who all want the best for each other. And if you're listening to this and you're wondering, hey, when can we start? How can I sign up? Well, January 2026 is going to be here sooner than we think, I tell you. But for Reed, Gar, Dex, Dolfo, and Enrico, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, and thanks for joining us. And one final huge congratulations to all of those who completed the expedition for 2024. Once again, a huge thanks to everybody for joining me today on the podcast. I could not be prouder of you, and in fact, all of the 2024 climbers. And whether you made it to the summit or not, just stepping onto that mountain is a victory in and of itself. Because isn't that what we're really doing here, right? So we're going to take a super quick break, but when we return, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on Last Known Location, which is a dark tension cue written by 52 Cue's family member, George Cicci. We'll be right back. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel, would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbor subscribers of 52 Cues, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly cue breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52 Cues. You can just go to 52cues.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or if maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers, then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52cues.com. So that was Last Known Location from George Cicci. George, thank you so much for sending this along. I really enjoyed it. Of course, I really like your stuff. George is an amazing trailer writer. He writes a lot of sound design kind of horror trailers, which really make my skin crawl, but that's okay. He is really good at this stuff, and it's been really cool seeing George, seeing you kind of break into more traditional type of forms, and not just trailers, but like these kind of dark tension cues. And what I think is really interesting, and I've said this to you before, I like how the character of what makes you sound like you is still present, whether it's a trailer cue or whether it's a tension cue like this. And it's that ear for kind of found sound design things used as motifs. So I think really nice job. So all that having been said, I feel like the cello sounds are a little kind of transient here. And in fact, I think there might be just a little bit too much transience throughout some of these. And it's not that it's really sibilant, it's just really sharp and attacky. And so I wonder if we can kind of spend a little time kind of building this out maybe just pull the energy back a little bit, not too much, because you don't want to kind of undermine what we've got. And it feels a little loud, especially in the back half of the cue. We're pushing -9, -10 lufs here, and I feel like we're dangerously close to flat topping, you know, where we're pushing so hard into the limiter that it's just crushing those. As far as the sound choices, I think the sound choices are absolutely on point. I do think that maybe this breakdown section here, about 1:20, I felt like we could have lived here a little bit longer. Probably could have doubled this up and then build. Just spend a little bit more time in this breakdown where it's this anticipation into this next kind of big section, hanging out on one chord so that we get a break from the two chords kind of back and forth, and build into. Now, I'm a little worried that we've kind of lost the motif a little bit. Bing, bum, bum. Is that present? Yeah, I feel like we've lost the primary motif through here to the point where it almost feels like a different cue because we're changing. There we have jump bum jump bum bum shaka bum 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 bum. But then in this next section, we change the rhythm. Bum 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 bum. There's not a ton of unifying aspects between this first section bringing over into the second section, and I wonder if we can bridge that gap a little bit, bringing the melody bum 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 in something, and maybe sticking to that kind of dotted quarter note, eighth note kind of driving rhythm. 1 and 2 and so we go jong 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 jong. And I wouldn't make the cue any longer. I would extend this kind of breakdown. Probably cut into the B section a little bit. If not, then maybe cut into this A section just a little bit. Yeah, I think cutting into this B section is probably a little bit better. So if we make the breakdown twice as long, we take those 4 bars from the final A section, or the return to A. All right, looking at our audio tail here, we've got quite a big kind of low rumble. You can see it's pretty darn loud. And so I would make sure to taper that off, and we have the end of the audio tail actually cutting off. Here it just stops. So you're going to want to really fade that out so that it sounds a lot more natural. Yep, probably could have used a riser or something to really nail that impact at the very, very end, so it feels very final, and it really does feel like the end of the cue. Yeah, so I feel like we kind of have a tale of 3 feels here. And I think once we lay into the jump, boom, and then sprinkle in the melody, we're kind of married to that throughout the end of the cue. And so we don't want to, change characters in the final act, and we want the final act of our cue to be the resolution of the tension that we've kind of been building up. And I mean kind of from a storytelling perspective, where we don't want to introduce main characters, and we don't want to take the characters, in this case, that cello motif, the melody that we have going on, we don't want to take those characters and put them in a totally new setting that doesn't have any context in the story that we've been telling all along the way. It would be like, telling a story that's a Western, and then taking, the sheriff into space, and suddenly, he's on a space station. You're like, well, wait a minute. I know it's the, anyway, is that metaphor making any sense? As far as the title, I think the title is great. Last Known Location. I think it kind of communicates almost like a cyber crime, cyberpunky, dystopian, industrial anger. And I think the title works really, really well. There's not anything I would really change about the title, but at the end of the day, I think this is good work. Really well done, George. And I'm always a fan. I'm always a fan of your stuff. But thank you so much for sending this along. And if you've been watching this and you would like to get feedback on your own cues, we do have feedback threads every single week over in 52 Cues. And if you would like your cue to be considered on the podcast, just submit your cue for the review in our submission, and we would be more than happy to consider that for inclusion on the podcast. But, getting your cues reviewed, it's a great way to improve. I mean, that's what the Expedition 52 was all about. Putting yourself out there, but also giving back to other composers, because the real secret is, and we talked about this, right? That giving feedback actually helps you more than it helps the person, because it helps you grow as a composer. But if you are looking for feedback that's a little bit more in-depth, I do offer 15-minute video reviews, where I go through your cue, talk about what can be improved, look at the title and the mix and everything else like that. If you're interested in that, you can head over to 52cues.com/feedback. But if you are ready to get regular feedback every single week within the community, outside of the weekly feedback threads, this is something we do twice a week over for the family subscribers. So that is going to do it for us this week. You definitely want to tune in next week, where I'm going to be sitting down with veteran producer, filmmaker, actor, composer, and longtime 52 Cues friend, Biagio Messina. And we're going to be talking about his journey through the world of television, from editing to directing to graphics, storytelling, and even writing music for his own shows. Because, man, he's had a hand just in about every part of making television, from in front of the camera to behind the camera, and behind the Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, even behind the DAW. Plus, we're going to be going over and talking about his upcoming workshop, where he's going to be taking us into the edit bay for a behind-the-scenes look at how editors actually use music in real-world productions. But you definitely don't want to miss that. But until then, I want to thank you for spending part of your day here with me. I know you have a ton of options out there, so the fact that you chose to hang out with me really does mean a lot. And if you got a lot of value out of today's episode, the best way you can pay it forward is by subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment, because it helps other composers just like you find me. So I hope you've had an amazing week, and I know that next week is going to be even more amazing. How do I know that, friends? Because I trust and believe that the universe, the whole universe, has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2025 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community, submitting your cue for review, or becoming a member subscriber of 52 Cues, head over to 52cues.com.